I'm out at Buck Creek Park walking my reactive dog Lennox. She's reactive to people and dogs and cars that slow down. She's reactive to sounds as well. So she's very, very sensitive to lots of things in her environment. I've had her for about 5 years. I got her from a kennel daycare organization that kept her in a run for about 2 years of her life. She showed fear at 6 months when they had her, and that fear grew into reactivity, probably as a result of being kept in a kennel environment. I've been working with her on this reactivity for probably 12 to 18 months, almost every day that I have her out on a walk. I'm working with her on it. You can see that this space is very, very wide open. It's like a sports complex. On this side of the park, there's very little activity. On the other side of the park, there's lots of activity. There's people and dogs and kids out sometimes. I like choosing these places to work with reactive dogs because I feel like the difference in the sides of the park allow me to really control the amount of triggers that I expose her to, and it's at a distance that I feel is pretty much stable. By that I mean people on the other side of the park are normally always going to be in a circular walking path or on a playground there, so it's rare that they are going to come towards me, and so I'm able to be the one to control the distance between Lennox and those triggers. And when we're working with reactivity, specifically when we're doing behavior modification with reactivity, doing those training sessions, the ability to control the distance and the density of those distractions, the triggers, are going to be very important. Training environment setup is everything. You'll notice that I'm going to switch the screen. You'll notice that I have Lennox on a normal harness, and I have her on a very long leash. It's really important for reactive dogs to have very, very, very regular, at least half-hour walks where they're able to make all the decisions that they want, so long as it's safe. So on this side of the park that has very little activity, I'm letting her smell whatever she wants to smell, I'm letting her go wherever she wants to go, and I'm more or less following her. This allows her to feel more confident because I'm giving her the power of choice. So she is able to move towards something or away from something if she wants. I think this is something that's very empowering for dogs. And you'll see how practicing her making choices over here where the stakes aren't as high is going to carry through when we move our way over here to the other side of the park where there are more triggers. Now I've worked with her again for 12 to 18 months working up foundational skills. So what you're going to see from her today is going to be a result of lots of regular practice. I'm talking 6 days a week I've worked with her on this. While we're watching Lennox walk over to the other side of the park, I'm going to try and go through some of those foundational exercises. The first thing that you want to train is a marker word. A marker word is similar to a clicker. So it's a sound that captures the behavior that you want. It's one of the most fundamental ways that you can communicate with your dog that they've done something right, and that allows us to gain traction in a lot of the other kinds of behaviors that we're training. Lennox's marker word is yes. She's afraid of a clicker, and I was trained to use the word yes as opposed to good or any other kind of marker word. So when I say yes, it has meaning. I say it in a certain inflection too. I say yes! And you see how she gave me a head turn there because I've conditioned her to that word yielding something great. And the something great that I like to use when we're first training a behavior is food, because it's something that most all dogs will readily eat. If your dog doesn't have a good food drive, it's probably because they're stressed and or they're what I call a kibble millionaire, so they're able to eat anything and everything that they want, and so they're never really wanting for food. So I have very high value treats here. They're her favorite kind. It's called Bill Jack, and you'll notice that I'm always carrying around my treat pouch with me. In my treat pouch I have those treats, and you can also see a foghorn. Foghorn is in case an emergency happens, like in case I encounter a loose dog, I can use the foghorn to scare that dog away. So this is my little setup here, right? Okay, so going back to using food as a reinforcer. So I conditioned her that the word yes equals treat. Yes, treat, yes, treat. And I train her this in my house, not out here.
Time, 1 hour. Distance, 1.51 miles.
Tracker going. So I train her with the word yes inside of my house. And I want a dog to head swivel and look at me when they hear the word yes. So after I train the dog yes, I'm able to lay down communication of those fundamental skills that I'm working on are paying out. So let's talk more about some of those fundamental skills. Fundamental skill number 1 is reinforcing offered eye contact. And the kind of offered eye contact that I like to train for is offered eye contact at the end of a tight leash. So kind of like what she's doing right now. It's a tight leash, so I'm not going to move forward until she turns around and looks at me. When she turns around and looks at me, I say yes, and I drop my hand down really quick to give her a treat. And then I also reinforce her by allowing her to continue to move forward in her environment. This offered eye contact, yes, come on, is a great game to play. When you're out in park settings like this. Stay on the periphery of the park on your normal lead and have her go out at the end, stop when she's pulling, and just wait for her to turn around and look at you. And dogs will turn around and look at you out of mild frustration. They want to move forward and they look around and you're like, Mom, why can't I move forward anymore? And the answer to that question is, you can't move forward anymore because I need you to take notice of me first and come back to me. I call this game the gravity game as well. It's a grounding exercise, it's a relaxation exercise, it's an engagement exercise. And oftentimes reactive dogs are reactive because they're impulsive. They're impulsive because I think they have a lot of anxiety, and they also tend to have a very, 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 very energetic brain. I think a byproduct of an energetic brain is a lot of anxiety. So teaching them impulse control skills, grounding skills, engagement skills are going to be really, really important. I never want a dog that has reactivity to move forward in their environment unless they're in a very calm state like this. I think a lot of the times, Lennox, dogs are not going to do well greeting other dogs or people because they're in an aroused state. So if I can kind of reinforce and maintain criteria for a more relaxed dog, their interactions with the world are going to be a lot better. And this is a relaxed dog right here. So we're going to reward that by moving forward in the environment. I'm going to start to go this way. And as we move this way, there's going to be a lot more people present. So I am again going to let Lennox steer me here. I'm going to gather my long line up a little bit. Come on, Lennox. And I let her steer to a degree. We can't walk that way into the main road, so I've just steered her over here. And the freedom of choice is still going to happen here. Lennox is still going to be able to let me know if, yes, that's another thing. Anytime your dog gives you eye contact, you make sure to reinforce it. You want it? Good job. Come on. So freedom of choice, continuing here. I want her to feel like she is in control of choosing whether or not she approaches a trigger or doesn't approach a trigger. Now, of course, if she chooses to approach a trigger, I'm not going to actually let her come up to them to where they could physically touch her. That's not a goal that I have with reactive dogs. My goal is simply to be able to walk past them without losing your mind. So when we're walking over to this more trigger dense area, I'm gonna see if she chooses avoidance. Yes, on her own. Come here, babe. If she chooses avoidance on her own, or if she chooses to continue to snowball up in that emotional state of mind and that high arousal. Over the past 12 to 18 months with her, I've tried to reinforce avoidance behavior and tried to prevent aggression. Reactivity is aggression. Aggression is barking, lunging, snarling at people, and it's a way for them to attempt to communicate to that thing, hey, I need distance, back up. And in a lot of dogs' cases that have chosen to be aggressive instead of avoidant, when they're faced with their triggers, they have chosen to be more aggressive because they haven't been able to choose avoidance. In Lennox's case, it was likely because she was kept in a kennel for 2 years of her life. That kennel space was not large enough for her to choose avoidance. So she chose to aggress. And wouldn't you know it, it probably worked just about 99% of the time. She would lunge up at her kennel and growl when a person came by or a dog came by, and they would just keep walking. So she was reinforced for that aggression. In her mind, that made the scary thing go away. So she's going to continue to do that behavior because it worked. So when we work with the reactive dogs, we're trying to redefine what to do in that situation. Yes, come on. And so what I want her to learn from her environment is that even if she doesn't choose to be aggressive with her triggers, the triggers are going to go away with avoidance. Not everyone is going to want to come and pet your dog. And even if they did want to pet their dog, yes, I would tell them, no, you can't. And so them not coming to pet her while she's choosing to be avoidant is reinforcing for her. Because remember, reactive dogs don't want the attention from the thing that they're barking at. They want distance. So if that person gives them distance while the dog chooses to be avoidant, I'm going to let the dog do that, and I'm going to allow the person in the environment to continue to give the dog what they want, which is that distance. Yes, good girl. So what are some avoidance behaviors? Avoidance behaviors include looking away, turning away, what's another one? Coming, like just literally walking away. Sniffing is more of a displacement behavior. Licking is a displacement behavior. Itching is a displacement behavior. And so of all those behaviors, I try and think which ones can I manipulate? So which ones can I make the dog do? And one of the things that I can really easily make the dog do is look away. So looking away is something that we get from that offered eye contact, right? When Lennox sees a trigger, and they're going to be coming up soon, so you'll start to see that she pulls more intensely on this leash. Yes, good girl. When she pulls intensely on that leash, she is cued to turn around and look at me like she did, based off of that gravity game behavior that we practiced. So I am training an avoidance behavior while practicing that gravity game. And so now I'm linking it to, you see the trigger, normally you pull, yes, because you're reactive, but guess what? I've reinforced this alternative behavior of you turning around and coming to me at the end of that tight leash, which is also, you guessed it, an avoidance behavior. That avoidance behavior works. You do not have to react at these people over here to make them go away. You avoiding and simply just walking past them also works. Yes. And all the while that I'm walking, If she turns around and looks at me and gives me focus, I'm going to reinforce that. Now, I don't know if you can see all these people over here, but normally this would have Lennox go nutso. She would be really reactive to all of this. And again, I'm letting her choose where she wants to go. Now, Lennox struggles more with dogs than she does people. I want you to start to watch her body language here. There's a person with a dog over there, and then there's a person running. The person running, moving faster, is going to be harder for Lennox to take in. The dog is going to be harder for Lennox to take in. It's because I know that. I'm gonna try and help her out here. I want to make her aware that a dog is over there, so I'm going to cue it by saying, "What is it?" She's seen it. You see her ears perk up. She's huffing a little bit. Now let's see what she does. She turns away. Yes, good girl. So I reinforce that with food. She doesn't want it, probably because she's a little bit high off her emotions. So we turn around and wait. Now when she turned around at me, I followed through and continued to turn. Now when this person comes out, yes, good girl. So her reinforcement is walking away. Now when this person pops up from behind these cars and she sees the dog, it might be harder for her. Yes, good girl, but she turned away. Look at that. She went back because it's hard. Yes, good girl. She turned away. Now in this moment, yes, good girl. She might not want food because she's hot. Oh, she did. Yes. Because she's hot. And that dog is also kind of stressful for her. So sometimes dogs' appetite goes down. Sometimes it goes up though. So she's climbing. There's a car approaching too. So that's trigger stacking. I want you to watch her tail. She's starting to get amped. Yes, but she decided to turn away. Good girl. She was climbing there. She caught herself. Now if she hadn't have caught herself, I would have had to intervene and try and that body shake is awesome too. That's a relief of stress. And she's moving away. Do you see that? She's like pulling me away, which is awesome. This is a restroom, so I don't want someone to pop out of that door. Come on then. Oh, there's a person coming out of a car. Yes, good girl. You see the turn away and the sniff to displace that stress. I was gonna say this is a restroom, and I don't want someone to pop out of that door in the restroom and surprise her, so I didn't allow her to choose to go that way. I had her go behind the building. So again, I'm letting her drive here. She was off leash. What would she be doing? Would she be charging over here? She would be right now, not charging, but walking. Come here, Lynn. There's another small dog she hasn't seen yet, so I'm gonna prepare her for it. Lennox, what is it? She saw it. Watch her body language. Guy is running too. That's really hard. You see, because it's hard, she started to lunge. So what I'm going to do to help her out is turn away. Lennox, come on. Yes, good girl. And she's still stuck. Come on, let's go. So I'm going to help her with that avoidance. Come on, let's go. Good job. Come on, Lennox. She's still stuck. Do you see? Come on, Len. Good. So she got really high off her emotions. Now, as I walk away, you see her keep checking in. We'll see if she can digest it better. Yes! So she just made the decision to move away and avoid it instead of aggress towards it. It started with aggression. She needed to see that body shake to alleviate stress. That's also really good. She chose aggression at first because it was too much for her. If that guy wasn't running with the dog, she probably would have done a lot better. But since he was running, it was really hard. And so it was too much for her. She went over threshold and she needed mom's help. So I gave it to her. And after I helped her, she did better with that distance though too. That distance was really important. And I wanted to show her that when we move away, and you choose avoidance, not choose, but when I ask for avoidance and you do avoidance behavior, it works. Like that dachshund and that man still went away. Now we're gonna come up on the same people again. This guy has his dachshund on a extendable lead. I hate extendable leashes. So we are going to make sure we stay at least 20 feet away. Now notice Lennox is pulling me right now. Because Lennox is pulling me and I know this dachshund is coming up to this trailhead right here, I'm gonna stop and wait to get more of a calm behavior from her because she's still too high. So we're gonna play the gravity game here. She doesn't know that dachshund is over there. So I'm gonna help her out. There she goes. You see that alert stance right there? She's seen it. She's at least scanning for it. I don't think she's actually seen the dachshund yet. So we're just playing gravity game here. We're letting her get lost. And we're reinforcing the more calm behavior. The turning around, body shaking, she's starting to come off of that stress. She's a little bit less intense. She just saw that dachshund.
Time 1 hour 15 minutes. Distance 1.86 miles.
Yes, good girl. Nice job. And we're gonna see if she wants to eat. She did. She's going back in. The dachshund's gonna be closer, so it's gonna be harder. So what's she gonna do? She's gonna pull on that leash. Yes, good girl, Lynn. And turn around and look at me. Good job. So this is the same dachshund that she struggled with in the parking lot. She just looked over her shoulder there at it. Yes, good girl. She's still very much aware that that dog is there. Yes! So it's right there. I don't think you can really see it that well. Yes, still very much aware. That guy was running with the dachshund. That's the same thing that she struggled with. Now, what's going to be interesting to see is where does Lennox choose to go? Does she choose to go forward? Because now I'm not restricting the leash at all. This is what would Lennox do if she was off leash in this situation. She just thought about reacting again and chose not to, and now she's walking away. So I reinforced that with food since she's got an appetite. And we're also going to continue to walk away from the thing that lit her up. That's a double reinforcement there. Paid her with food, paid her with distance away from the trigger. I don't believe that nature would really design any dog to be as anxious as Lennox is around other dogs, specifically of her own species or people. Okay, we got a guy on a lawnmower coming up. And I was saying all that to say, let's see how she does. What is it? She hasn't seen it. Yes, Lenny. Good girl. Okay. I say all that to say that, come on, let's go. Nature wouldn't design a dog to be aggressive towards their own species all the time. Aggression has its place in communication. It's a dog's way to communicate negative feedback. And just like people shouldn't be expected to be happy and complicit with everything that happens to them, I don't think dogs should be either. The issue is that when you're super aggressive in situations like this, very normal situations where you're not being accosted, where that other trigger is not saying, hey, let's have a conflict, and Lennox brings the conflict so frequently, that sets her up for failure as an organism. That's going to invite a lot more fights. It's going to invite a lack of trust, and she's not going to benefit from the social relationships that she has with other dogs. I think that dogs like Lennox have suffered from environmental trauma, as Lennox has. They also sometimes, I think often suffer from being predisposed genetically to having a brain that is more anxious. She's a cattle dog mix. Cattle dogs are selectively bred to be very intense. And so I think when people have selectively bred dogs for certain utilities, like German Shepherds as guard dogs, for example, they set them up to be more prone to feeling stress, to being more anxious. And so I think Lennox genuinely does suffer from some type of mental dysfunction. If she was a human being and she went to a psychiatrist, I imagine that she would be diagnosed with generalized anxiety and some kind of intermittent rage disorder. And so she needs therapy. Therapy is this, but you have to do it every day to make them feel better, because in her mind and her brain, being reactive and explosive makes more sense. And unfortunately, her environment, her history, and practicing that behavior has always worked. So I have to come in and reinforce this alternative behavior pattern and make an argument to Lennox and say, hey, choosing avoidance instead of aggression works too. And that's the hard thing, right, Len? Reactive dogs can be very frustrating, but they also can teach you so much. I am eternally grateful and thankful for everything that this little dog has taught me. It requires a lot of empathy and patience and compassion and teamwork, but I swear once you get there, it's gonna feel amazing. I hope this helped you guys. I look forward to hearing your questions. Bye.